November 1st, 1931. The Grand Hotel in Verviers, Belgium, sits shrouded in the damp chill of late autumn. Inside room 11, the air is thick with the smoke of nervous cigarettes. Hans-Thilo Schmidt is not a soldier on the front lines, nor a general commanding armies. He is a bureaucrat in a cheap suit, sweating through his shirt. He sits across from a French intelligence officer, his hands trembling slightly as they rest on a leather briefcase. Inside that case lies the future of the German Reich. Schmidt is not driven by ideology or political dissent. He is driven by the crushing weight of a lifestyle he cannot afford. The expensive dinners, the lavish gifts, and the incessant demands of a romantic life that has spiraled beyond his financial control. He needs money to silence the complaints of a life that expects more than he can give. With a final, hesitant glance at the door, he slides the documents across the table. In this quiet, sordid exchange, the unbreakable Enigma machine is not defeated by a mathematician or a bomb, but by the simple, desperate greed of a man trying to pay for his sins. Berlin, 1928. The Weimar Republic is crumbling, and in the shadows of the fragile democracy, the German military is already preparing for the next war. They are rearming in secret, violating the Treaty of Versailles with covert training and industrial expansion. But their most dangerous weapon is not a tank, a plane, or a gas. It is a typewriter. Or at least it looks like one. Deep within the signals offices of the Bendler block, officers operate a device that weighs 26 pounds and sits inside a wooden box. It is the Enigma. Invented by the German engineer Arthur Scherbius, originally for commercial banking security, the machine has been adopted and modified by the Reichswehr to serve the gods of war. To the German High Command, this machine is not just a tool, it is a mechanical miracle. It represents the absolute triumph of German engineering over the chaotic prying eyes of the enemy. The concept is deceptively simple, yet mathematically infinite. When an operator presses a key, say the letter A, an electrical signal travels through a series of 3 rotating wheels, known as rotors. These rotors are wired internally to scramble the signal. The current passes through a reflector at the end, travels back through the rotors a second time, and illuminates a different letter on a lamp board. A becomes X. But here is the genius of Scherbius's design. The machine never sleeps. With every keystroke, the first rotor clicks forward 1 position. The electrical path changes. If the operator presses A again, the light might show P. Press it a third time. It glows L. The substitution alphabet changes after every single letter. The complexity scales vertically. The operators possess a set of 5 distinct rotors, choosing 3 for the day's setup. They can insert them in any order. They can set the starting ring positions to any of the 26 letters. On top of the rotors, the military added a plug board, the steckerbrett, on the front of the machine, allowing them to swap pairs of letters before the signal even hits the rotors. The mathematics of the Enigma are staggering. The number of possible setting combinations for the military model is approximately 150 million. To break a message by brute force, checking every possible setting, would take a team of thousands of men working for longer than the age of the universe. By 1930, the Enigma is the nervous system of the German military revival. It coordinates the secret movements of the pocket battleships. It transmits the orders for the clandestine pilot training in Russia. It carries the diplomatic cables that are slowly isolating Poland and France. The Germans are so confident in the machine's security that they stop worrying about interception. They broadcast their secrets over the radio waves, filling the air above Europe with Morse code, knowing that even if the British or French record every beep and squeak, all they will have is gibberish. General Erich Feldgiebel, the head of the German army's signal troops, operates under a doctrine of absolute security. In his mind, the Enigma is an unbreakable wall. No human mind can reverse engineer the chaos generated by the rotors. It creates a sense of invulnerability within the Reich's leadership. They believe they can speak openly in the dark, because they possess the only flashlight. However, this arrogance blinds them to a critical reality. Cryptography is not just about mathematics, it is about implementation. The machine is perfect, but the men who operate it are not. And the men who guard its secrets are even less so. While the generals gaze at the impressive statistics of their cipher machine, they forget that every machine must be built, distributed, and documented. Manuals must be written. Keys must be generated. And somewhere in the bureaucracy of the Chiffrierstelle, the cipher office, there are men who handle these secrets every day. Men who are not paid like generals, yet who have appetites that a civil servant's salary cannot satiate. The sheer volume of encrypted traffic is growing daily. As the 1930s dawn, the airwaves are thick with the meaningless noise of Enigma. To the casual listener, it is static. To the intelligence agencies of the Allied powers, it is a taunt. They can hear the Germans plotting, but they cannot understand a word. The black chambers of London and Paris are silent, defeated by the mechanical complexity of the rotating wheels. The world is drifting toward a cataclysm, and the warning signs are encrypted in a code that no one can read. In Paris, the mood inside the 12e Bureau, French military intelligence, is one of quiet desperation. It is 1930, and the French, arguably the premier cryptanalysts of the Great War, are hitting a wall. General Gustave Bertrand, the head of the cryptology section, sits in an office overflowing with intercepted intercepts. He is a man of action, a spy master who prefers the tangible reality of stolen documents to the abstract theories of mathematics. He looks at the German traffic, and he sees a fortress. The French have managed to purchase a commercial version of the Enigma machine from the open market. They have taken it apart, studied the rotors, and analyzed the gearing. But it is useless. The German military has modified their machines with secret internal wirings and the devious plugboard that swaps letters before they even enter the encryption maze. Without knowing the specific internal wiring of the military rotors, the commercial machine is nothing more than a paperweight. The French mathematicians, brilliant as they are, declare the military Enigma unbreakable. They stop trying to solve the puzzle and start filing the intercepts away in dusty archives, labeling them with a single damning word: indecipherable. But 800 miles to the east, in Warsaw, the resignation of the French is a luxury the Polish cannot afford. Poland exists in a state of existential dread. Squeezed between the rising Soviet giant to the east and a revanchist Germany to the west, the Poles know that their survival depends entirely on information. They do not have the Atlantic Ocean to protect them, nor the Maginot Line. They have only their wits. In the Saxon Palace in Warsaw, the Bureau Chiffrow, the Cipher Bureau, takes a radical step that will change the history of warfare. Lieutenant Colonel Maximilian Czenski, the head of the German section, realize that the old methods of linguists and puzzle solvers are obsolete. Enigma is a machine generated by logic, therefore it must be defeated by logic. He recruits 3 young mathematics students from Poznan University, Marian Rajewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski. These 20-something civilians are brought into a secret room, sworn to silence, and told to do the impossible. Rajewski, the quietest and arguably the most brilliant of the 3, stares at the chaotic strings of letters. He begins to see patterns where others see noise. He realizes that the Germans, in their arrogance, are making a procedural error. To ensure the message is received correctly, the German operators type a 3-letter message key twice at the start of every transmission. This tiny repetition is a crack in the armor. It allows Rajewski to use permutation theory to understand how the rotors move relative to each other. However, genius has its limits. Rajewski builds a system of equations to model the machine, but the equations contain too many unknowns. He is like a man trying to solve a puzzle in a dark room. He can feel the shape of the pieces, but he cannot see the picture. He needs the variables. He needs to know the internal wiring of the rotors and the daily settings used by the German army. Without this data, his equations are just abstract theory. The Polish team works until their eyes bleed, calculating thousands of permutations by hand. But the Enigma remains a black box. The stalemate is absolute. The Germans are broadcasting freely, confident in their invincibility. The French have given up. The British are barely paying attention. The Poles are close but blind. The cryptographic world is deadlocked. The technology of the defense has far outpaced the technology of the offense. The only way to break the Enigma is not through a better equation, but through a breach of trust. The Allies don't need a calculator. They need a thief. And in Berlin, amidst the economic ruin of the Great Depression, the perfect thief is waiting to be found. He is not a master criminal or a trained saboteur. He is a man who feels the world owes him something. The deadlock of the century is about to be broken, not by a general's strategy, but by a brother's jealousy. The greatest security flaw in the history of the Third Reich was not a loose wire or a faulty rotor. It was a family dinner. To understand the betrayal, one must look at the table where the Schmidt brothers sat. On one side is Rudolf Schmidt. He is the ideal German soldier. Disciplined, brilliant, and rapidly ascending the ranks of the Reichswehr. By the early 1930s, Rudolf is a key figure in the Signal Corps, the very organization responsible for securing Germany's communications. He is the man who signs off on the Enigma's distribution. He is the guardian of the secrets. On the other side of the table sits his younger brother, Hans-Thilo. Hans-Thilo is the photo negative of Rudolf. While Rudolf commanded men, Hans-Thilo managed a chemical factory that went bankrupt. While Rudolf wore the crisp field grey uniform of a chaotic nation rebuilding its pride, Hans-Thilo wore the shabby suits of the unemployed. By 1931, the younger Schmidt is drifting, bitter, and fundamentally broken by the economic collapse of the Weimar Republic. But his appetite for the high life has not diminished with his bank account. Hans-Thilo fancies himself a playboy. He maintains a wife, but he also maintains a string of mistresses and a taste for expensive Berlin nightlife. He surrounds himself with women who expect champagne in a time of breadlines. The complaint mentioned in the history books is not a singular event, but a constant, grinding chorus in his ear. His partners complain about his inability to provide the luxury he promised. His wife complains about the bills. The humiliation of poverty is compounded by the shining success of his brother. In a gesture of brotherly loyalty that would doom his country, Rudolf intervenes. He pulls strings to get Hans-Thilo a job as a civilian employee at the Chiffrierstelle, the army's cipher office in Berlin. Rudolf believes he is saving his brother from destitution. In reality, he is placing a fox inside the henhouse. Hans-Thilo is given a desk, a security clearance, and access to the safe where the Enigma manuals are stored. He is not a cryptographer. He is an administrator. He sees the top secret stamps not as warnings but as price tags. He looks at the manuals for the Enigma and sees a way to silence the complaints at home. He does not hate Germany. He simply loves money more than he fears treason. This leads to the second angle of this tragedy: the cold pragmatism of the French espionage machine. Hans-Thilo does not walk into a British embassy. He chooses the French, knowing their proximity and their desperation makes them better buyers. He sends a tentative letter to the Deuxième Bureau. The French do not dismiss it. They dispatch their ace handler, a man named Rodolphe Lemoyne, codenamed Rex. Lemoyne is a master of human psychology. When he meets Schmidt at the Grand Hotel in Verviers, he does not treat him like a traitor. He treats him like a misunderstood gentleman. Lemoyne sees immediately that Schmidt is vain and insecure. He plays to this. He offers Schmidt a code name that reflects the remnants of a burnt-out life, Asche, meaning ashes. The transaction is shockingly simple. For 10,000 Reichsmarks, a fortune that would silence every complaint from every girlfriend Schmidt has, he agrees to provide access. He cannot steal the machine itself. That would be noticed immediately. But he can steal the Gebrauchsanleitung, the operating manual, and the Schlüsselanleitung, the keying manual. These documents are the Rosetta Stone. The machine itself is just a box of gears. The manuals explain the logic. They explain the wiring of the rotors. They explain how the monthly key sheets are generated. Schmidt, driven by the petty grievances of his personal life, agrees to sell the intellectual blueprint of the German military for the price of a few years of luxury. As they shake hands in that hotel room, the dynamic of the war shifts before a shot is fired. Rudolf Schmidt goes to work every day, believing his brother is a grateful clerk, diligently filing paperwork. He has no idea that every time Hans-Thilo smiles at him across the office, he is calculating the exchange rate of his brother's honor. The betrayal is intimate, fueled by proximity and the invisible friction of sibling rivalry. While Schmidt is the leak, the bucket is held by General Gustave Bertrand. Bertrand is an anomaly in the world of intelligence. In a profession dominated by shadows and silence, he is a man of loud, decisive movement. He realizes quickly that the intelligence Schmidt is providing, the Asche documents, is too hot for France to handle alone. The French mathematicians are still paralyzed by the complexity of the Enigma. They look at Schmidt's stolen instruction manuals, see the wiring diagrams, and shake their heads. They essentially declare, "We know how the machine works, but we still cannot read the messages." They possess the blueprint of the lock, but they lack the tools to turn it. This leads to a decision that violates every rule of espionage: sharing the secrets. Bertrand travels to London. He presents the documents to the British Code and Cipher School. The British, at this stage in history, are equally skeptical. They view the Enigma with a detached pessimism, believing that even with the internal wiring known, the variable daily settings make a timely solution impossible. They politely decline to pursue it further. The Asche material is seen as interesting, but ultimately useless. A map to a treasure that no one can reach. But Bertrand has one card left to play. In December 1932, he travels to Warsaw. He walks into the Saxon palace and places the documents on the desk of Colonel Guido Langer, the head of the Polish Cipher Bureau. The atmosphere here is different. There is no skepticism, only a hungry desperation. When the Poles look at the photographs of the manual Schmidt stole, they do not see a hopeless puzzle. They see the missing variable in their equation. This moment highlights a crucial tactical angle, the geography of desperation. The French and British, safe behind their borders and navies, treat the Enigma as an academic problem. The Poles, staring down the barrel of a German invasion, treat it as a survival mechanism. This difference in motivation is the catalyst. Schmidt's greed provided the fuel, but it is Polish anxiety that provides the spark. Meanwhile, the meetings between Schmidt and his handler, Lemoyne, fall into a terrifying rhythm. They meet in secluded ski resorts in the Swiss Alps and unremarkable hotel rooms in Prague. The procedure is always the same, a dance of high treason performed in absolute silence. Schmidt arrives with a briefcase containing the monthly key sheets, the actual code settings for the German army for the upcoming month. Lemoyne does not take them. That would be noticed. Instead, he lays them out on a bed or a desk and photographs them, page by page, while Schmidt smokes and watches the door. Schmidt is becoming rich. The money from French intelligence flows into his pockets, quieting the complaints of his mistresses and allowing him to play the role of the successful Berliner. He buys the affection he craves, unaware that every Reichsmark he spends is a down payment on the destruction of his own government. He is the ultimate insider threat. The man who is invisible because he is mundane. He is not scaling fences. He is walking through the front door, waving to the guards, and carrying the keys to the kingdom in his lunch pail. As 1932 draws to a close, the stage is set for the most dramatic intellectual breakthrough of the 20th century. The pieces are all in motion. The French have the spy, the Germans have the arrogance, and in a small room in Warsaw, a young mathematician named Marian Rejewski is waiting for a package that will change the world. Warsaw, December 9th, 1932. The city is frozen under a layer of grey slush. Inside the Bureau Schiffruf, the radiator pipes clank in the silence, fighting a losing battle against the Polish winter. Marian Rejewski sits at his desk, his eyes rimmed with red, surrounded by stacks of paper covered in dense algebraic equations. For months, Rejewski has been trying to solve a system of 6 equations with 3 unknown variables. He has pushed the mathematics as far as humanly possible, analyzing the cycles of the Enigma's permutations. He knows how the letters change places, but without knowing the internal wiring of the rotors, the specific path the electricity takes inside the wheels, his equations are unsolvable. He is trying to reconstruct a machine he has never seen, based solely on the shadows it casts. Then the door opens. Colonel Langer places a brown folder on Rejewski's desk. He does not speak. He simply nods and leaves. Rejewski opens the folder. Inside are the photographs provided by Hans-Thilo Schmidt. They are not high-quality prints. They are grainy, hurried snapshots, taken in a bathroom in Belgium. But to Rejewski, they are beautiful. They contain the tables of daily keys for September and October 1932. They list the plugboard connections, the rotor order, and the ring settings for every single day of those 2 months. Rejewski's heart hammers against his ribs. This is the answer key. He no longer has to guess the variables for those specific days. He has them. He grabs a pencil, The atmosphere in the room shifts from academic frustration to the electric tension of a hunt nearing its end. He inputs the known settings from Schmidt's stolen tables into his system of equations. The math begins to unravel the knot. He works backward from the result to the source. If he knows that on September 15th, A became G, and he knows the plugboard settings and the rotor positions, he can mathematically isolate the wiring of the rotor itself. It is a grueling manual process. There are no computers to crunch the numbers. There is only Rejewski's mind and the scratching of graphite on paper. He attacks the problem with a ferocity born of exhaustion. He solves for the right-hand rotor first, the fast rotor. The letters fall into place. He determines its internal wiring completely. Then the middle rotor, then the left. In the span of a few weeks, doing what the greatest minds in Britain and France claimed was impossible, Rejewski reconstructs the internal anatomy of the Wehrmacht's machine. He writes down the 26-letter pairings for each of the 3 military rotors. He leans back in his chair. He is trembling. He has not just solved a puzzle, he has effectively stolen the German army's voice, but the victory is theoretical. To prove it, he must verify it physically. He rushes to the Bureau's engineering section. He hands the wiring diagrams to the mechanics. "Build this," he orders. They take an existing commercial Enigma machine, the same useless model the French had bought, and they begin to rewire the rotors according to Rejewski's calculations. They solder new connections. They modify the stepping mechanism. They turn a civilian toy into a replica of the Nazi war machine. Rejewski sits down at the newly modified Polish Enigma. He picks up a jagged, encrypted intercept from a German transmission earlier that week. He sets the rotors according to his calculated key. He types the first few letters of the ciphertext. The lamps light up. W-A-N. A word forms. Then a sentence. The gibberish dissolves into German military orders. The wall of silence that has protected the Third Reich's secrets for years has just been breached. Not by a battalion of tanks, but by a girlfriend's complaint that pushed a weak man to sell a manual, and a mathematician who knew how to read it. The breakthrough is not the end. It is the starting gun for an industrial race against time. Rejewski and his team realize that solving the Enigma by hand takes too long. By the time they calculate the daily key, the day is over, and the intelligence is stale. They need speed. They need to mechanize the solution, just as the Germans mechanized the encryption. Rejewski designs a monster. He calls it the Bomba cryptologiczna, the cryptologic bomb. It is not an explosive. It is a ticking, whirring aggregate of 6 Enigma machines, wired together, powered by an electric motor. It is an early computer designed for a singular purpose: brute force logic. The Bomba simulates the turning of the rotors at high speed, checking thousands of potential settings every minute. It searches for the female pattern, a specific repetition in the message key. When it finds a match, it stops. The silence that follows the whirring is the sound of victory. It means the daily key has been found. For nearly 6 years, the Poles read the Third Reich's mail. They track the mobilization of the Wehrmacht. They watch the Luftwaffe grow. They know the names of the commanders and the locations of the depots. They do this in total secrecy, terrified that a single slip will alert the Germans to change the system. But the Germans are relentless in their pursuit of perfection. In December 1938, the blackout returns. The Germans introduce 2 new rotors to the mix, increasing the possible combinations tenfold. The Bomba is rendered obsolete overnight. The Poles calculate they would need 60 bombers to break the new traffic, an investment far beyond the budget of their threatened nation. The silence returns. The shadow of the swastika looms over the border, and the Bureau Sifrov is blind once again. This leads to the most critical meeting in the history of intelligence. July 25th, 1939, 5 weeks before the invasion of Poland. The location is a secret facility in the Kabaty Woods near the village of Pyry, south of Warsaw. The air is thick with the resin of pine trees and the heat of summer. Colonel Lange welcomes his guests. General Bertrand from France, and the eccentric genius Dilwyn Dilly Knox from Britain's Code and Cipher School. The Allies have come expecting bad news. They believe the meeting is a formality, a sharing of failures. Dilly Knox is particularly skeptical. He has spent years trying to break the Enigma linguistically and failed. He believes the Poles are as stuck as he is. Then Lange drops the bombshell. He does not just tell them the code is breakable. He does not just show them the math. He signals to his assistants, who wheel in 2 objects covered in cloth. Lange pulls back the covers. Underneath are 2 perfect functioning replicas of the German military Enigma machine. The room goes silent. The British and French are stunned. They are looking at the impossible. Lange explains everything. The mathematics of Rejewski, the wiring derived from the equations, and the initial keys provided by the traitor, Asche. He tells them, "We have no time left. We cannot use these anymore. The invasion is coming. Take them." It is a moment of supreme altruism. Poland is about to be destroyed. Yet they hand over their most precious possession to their allies, hoping that even if Warsaw falls, the secret will survive in London and Paris. Knox, usually a man of stiff upper lip, is visibly moved. He touches the machine, his fingers tracing the rotors that have baffled the British Empire for a decade. The machines are packed into diplomatic luggage. One goes to Paris. The other travels to London, eventually arriving at a Victorian estate known as Bletchley Park. Back in Germany, Hans-Thilo Schmidt has no idea what he has done. He is still meeting Lemoyne, still selling keys, still funding his lifestyle. He believes he is a small-time crook selling minor secrets. He does not realize that the documents he sold in 1931 have just been weaponized. He has unwittingly given the Allies the foundation for Ultra, the intelligence source that will eventually hunt down the U-boats and break the back of the Nazi war machine. The complaint of a girlfriend has metastasized into the ultimate Trojan horse. As the train carrying the Polish Enigma rattles toward the safety of England, the tanks of the Panzer divisions are massing on the Polish border. The war is about to begin, but the weapon that will end it is already safely in enemy hands. September 1, 1939. The sky over Poland turns black with Heinkels and Stukas. The Wehrmacht smashes across the border, proving the terrifying efficacy of blitzkrieg. In Warsaw, the cryptologists of the Bureau Sifrov destroy their files and flee south toward Romania, escaping just steps ahead of the Gestapo. Their physical office is gone, but their legacy has already crossed the channel. In Berlin, the war brings a new reality for Hans-Thilo Schmidt. He is no longer just a corrupt bureaucrat. He is a traitor in a nation at total war. The penalty for his actions is no longer prison. It is a firing squad. Yet, incredibly, he does not stop. As the German armies sweep through Europe, crushing France in 6 weeks, Schmidt remains at his desk in the cipher office. He is the quiet ghost in the machine. Meanwhile, in the muddy countryside of Buckinghamshire, England, the Polish gift is bearing fruit. At Bletchley Park, a new generation of code breakers, led by the brilliant Alan Turing and Gordon Welchman, takes the Polish Bomba and evolves it. They build the British Bomba, a massive electromechanical beast that ticks through the permutations of the Enigma rotors day and night. But the machine alone is not enough. It needs a starting point. It needs a crib, and Schmidt provides it. Even after the invasion of France in 1940 scatters the French intelligence service, the connection remains. Schmidt continues to meet his handlers in increasingly dangerous locations. The documents he provides, tables of settings, monthly key sheets, allow Bletchley Park to verify their own breaks. When the Germans change their procedures, throwing the British into darkness, it is often a scrap of intel originating from Schmidt, or the sloppy habits of the operators he manages that turns the lights back on. The tragedy of the French campaign is that the intelligence was there, but the command structure was paralyzed. Schmidt had provided information that hinted at the German plans, but the French generals, entrenched in the thinking of 1914, could not react fast enough to the speed of 1940. The irony is bitter. France paid for the secrets that could have saved them, but they lacked the will to use them. However, across the water, the story is different. As the U-boat wolf packs tighten their grip on the Atlantic, threatening to starve Britain into submission, the Enigma breaks become the difference between life and death. Because of the foundation laid by Schmidt's treason and Rejewski's genius, the British eventually begin to read the U-boat traffic. They reroute convoys around the waiting submarines. They pinpoint the location of supply tankers. The Asche documents are the first domino in a chain that leads directly to the survival of Great Britain. While Schmidt sits in Berlin, complaining about the rationing and worrying about his mistresses, the keys he sold are guiding British destroyers in the North Atlantic. He is arguably the most destructive soldier in the German army, and he has never fired a gun. But in the world of espionage, luck is a finite resource. The German counterintelligence service, the Abwehr, and the terrifying Gestapo are not incompetent. They know there is a leak. They can smell it. They see the British convoys dodging their U-boats with impossible precision. They begin to hunt. The net tightens not around Bletchley, but around the source. The end, when it comes, is swift and brutal. In 1943, the German occupation of France finally catches up with the spy ring. The Gestapo arrests Rodolphe Lemoine, the charming French spy master who had seduced Schmidt into treason a decade earlier. Lemoine is a professional, but he is an old man, and the Gestapo's methods are not subtle. Under the intense pressure of interrogation, the wall of silence cracks. He gives up the name. Hans-Thilo Schmidt. On April 1st, 1943, the knock on the door echoes through Schmidt's Berlin apartment. It is not an April Fool's joke. The Gestapo drags him to the cells of the Lehrterstrasse prison. The Unbreakable code clerk is broken within days. He confesses to everything. The meetings in the Alps, the photos in the hotel rooms, the money, the women. The shockwave of his confession travels straight to the Eastern Front, where his brother, Rudolf Schmidt, is now a General Oberst, a Colonel General commanding the 2nd Panzer Army. Rudolf is a decorated war hero, a man of unimpeachable honor. But in the paranoia of the Third Reich, blood guilt is real. Hitler is apoplectic. The idea that the brother of a panzer general sold the secrets of the Enigma is a humiliation the regime cannot stomach. Rudolf is stripped of his command. He is flown back to Berlin, interrogated, and forced into a dishonorable retirement. His career, built on discipline and loyalty, is incinerated by the brother he tried to save from poverty. Hans-Thilo, however, knows there is no retirement waiting for him. He knows what the Gestapo does to traitors. In September 1943, sitting in his cell, he makes his final decision. His daughter is allowed a brief visit. She brings him a small food parcel. Hidden inside, or perhaps slipped to him by a sympathetic guard, or a complicit official who wanted the scandal to end, is a capsule of poison. On September 19, 1943, Hans-Thilo Schmidt swallows the cyanide. He dies foaming at the mouth on a cold prison floor, taking the full extent of his betrayal to the grave. The Germans bury the body and the secret. They never publicly admit that the Enigma was compromised. To the very end of the war, they believe the machine is secure, blaming their losses on radar, spies, or Italian incompetence. They never realized that the rot was inside the box. The war grinds on for 2 more bloody years, but the damage Schmidt inflicted is irreversible. The Bletchley Park team, armed with the knowledge that began with Schmidt and was perfected by Rejewski and Turing, continues to read the German mind. They shortened the war by an estimated 2 years, saving millions of lives. The perfect machine lies rusting in the wreckage of 1,000 U-boats and tanks. The mathematical fortress was stormed not by a genius siege, but because the back door was left unlocked by a man who just wanted to pay for dinner. Today, the Enigma machine sits behind glass in museums around the world, a silent, mechanical testament to the technical ambition of the Third Reich. With its intermeshed rotors and millions of permutations, it remains a marvel of engineering. Mathematically, the German High Command was correct. The code was, for all practical purposes, unbreakable. If the war had been fought by machines alone, the secrets of the Atlantic would have remained safe forever. But war is not fought by machines. It is fought by men. The story of Hans-Thilo Schmidt is a stark reminder of the terrifying fragility of history. He was not a master spy trained in the arts of subterfuge. He was not an ideological hero risking his life for freedom. He was a flawed, envious man with a brother he resented and a lifestyle he could not afford. The security of a totalitarian empire crumbled not because of a breakthrough in physics, but because a mid-level bureaucrat needed money to silence the complaints of his domestic life. It is easy to analyze World War II through the macroscopic lens of strategy, the movement of armies, the tonnage of steel, the range of bombers. But the Asche affair teaches us that the pivot point of history is often microscopic. The unbreakable wall was breached by the friction of sibling rivalry and the simple, desperate greed of a lover. Marian Rejewski, Alan Turing, and the minds at Bletchley Park widened that breach into a chasm, pouring their brilliance into the gap Schmidt created. They built the computers that would eventually define the modern age. But they did not build the door. They only walked through it. Hans-Thilo Schmidt left it unlocked. In the end, the most sophisticated cipher device of the 20th century was defeated by the oldest human vulnerability of all. The Germans spent millions attempting to secure the Enigma against mathematics, but they forgot to secure it against human nature. The code was unbreakable. The man was not